Welcome back to the weekend editions of Daily Dose of Hebrew. We are continuing our study of 1 Samuel 3, and today we're on the accents of verse 13. And let's begin with reading the Hebrew, and then we'll get an overall translation under our belt. Let's read this together. Vehigadti lo ki shofet ani et beito ad olam. Ba'avon asher yada ki mekalelim lahem banaiv velo chiha bam. And so that's our reading. Let's look at a translation here, and we would have then, and I declare to him that judging I am, or that I am judging. And if we go with the context as we saw last week, we could put an inceptive participle here. I am about to judge his house forever, until eternity, ad olam, forever, on account of the iniquity, or because of the iniquity, the bait here being a because of, or on account of the iniquity which he knew that blasphemers for themselves, or blasphemers themselves, his sons. If we jump down here and pick up the subject, it would be that his sons were blaspheming themselves. And we looked last week at most English translations that add his sons were blaspheming God. But that's added in there. The sons were blaspheming themselves. Not that they were blaspheming themselves. They were themselves the ones blaspheming. So that's how that gets translated out. And here's the negation, and not, he restrained, or he did not restrain them, or he did not reprimand them, something of that nature. So there's our translation. And so the first, we want to look at the accents in order to make the major breaks, and again, dividing the verse into smaller segments for ease of translation. And the one we want to look at the beginning here is the Sof Pasuk and the Silluq, and then we want to find the Athnach. Now, most of us are familiar with the Sof Pasuk and Silluq combo, and remember they're always together, and then the Athnach is the one that moves throughout the verse. Now, as we regularly do, let's now look at the Athnach segment alone, and then we'll add the Silluq segment back in to get the whole verse. Now, with the Athnach segment, we want to look for the near subordinate, which in the Athnach segment is the tifka, and we find it here. And then we want to find the far subordinate disjunctive accent to the Athnach, and it's the zakef katon here. Now, that's the pattern that I hope you're getting used to if you've been with us for a while. We see that pretty regularly. And we have the line broken already at the tifka before ad olam, so let's leave that break, and then I'm going to add a line here to show the break at the zakef. There we go. Now, in the tifka segment, we have a near subordinate disjunctive accent. It's the tabir right here. And the tabir is a weak disjunctive accent, so it doesn't fall in a place where we might see a comma normally. We would translate the ground clause here as for judging I am, when we supply the to be verb, for judging I am his house, or for I am judging his house, I am about to judge his house, that idea. Now, in English, we don't have any breaks or pauses syntactically or orally in that clause. However, in Hebrew, the break here at the tabir is a very light break to syntactically set off the subject of the participle from its direct object. Now, the other accents that we have here are all conjunctive. We have the merikah right here, and then the munach here in the zakef segment. So now let's look at the Silluq segment alone, and then we'll see some patterns that you are hopefully recognizing if you've been tracking through with us. So now that we have just the Silluq segment on the screen, let's find the near subordinate disjunctive accent. Now remember, we are looking for the disjunctive accents primarily, since those give us the syntactic and the semantic breaks into smaller and smaller segments to translate together. So first we have the near subordinate tifka again here, and next we look for the zakef, and we find it here, another zakef katon. Now, since the zakef falls so late in the Silluq segment, we have room for both a near and a far subordinate to the zakef this time. The near subordinate is the pashta here, and the far subordinate is the revia here. So now that we have those marked off, I want to show the syntax of the key clause here. Sometimes a key clause may be conjoined to a verbal element as an explanation. And in this case, if that were so, it may be read something like, on account of the iniquity which he knew that, and the sentence would proceed to explain what that iniquity was. To some degree, that's what we get here anyway. However, since the revia marks a break between the verbal and the key clause, we should see the clause more as a ground clause explaining the sin of Eli's sons, the iniquity which he knew, for blasphemers themselves were his sons, or for his sons were blasphemers. Then after the Zakaph, we have Eli's lack of action. He did not rebuke them, almost following up from Yada earlier in the verse that Eli knew their sin and didn't stop his sons. In other words, we could take the ground clause out and Eli is still implicated and guilty. The key clause provides the specific ground and is therefore set off within the rest of the clause, beginning with asher. So the whole Silluq segment becomes something like this. On account of the iniquity which he knew, what did he knew? For his sons were blasphemers themselves, and he did not rebuke them. Now let's go back and add in the Athnach segment, and we'll get one final translation of the whole verse. So let's translate through this. And I declared to him that judging I am, or I'm about to judge his house forever, on account of the iniquity which he knew, for his son, or for blasphemers themselves were his sons, or his sons were blasphemers, and not he rebuked or restrained. He did not restrain them. So that is today's Daily Dose with Accents. I hope that's helpful for you. That wraps it up, and until next time, shalom.